All right, y'all. Welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Headline. This is where we talk about a specific article and dig in beyond what you see at face value with the headline. Did it get it right? Is there more to talk about? That's why we bring on subject matter experts to help us unpack. So today I am super excited for two reasons. Number one, our guest is a subject matter expert, but he also happens to be my husband. And second of all, I'm excited because it's our first recording that we're ever doing in person with our guest. Usually we are virtual via Zoom. So this is very exciting on various fronts. So our guest today, again, my husband, Dan Rivers. He has been in the real estate industry for over 2 decades. Spanning a variety of different fields: property management, sales, private money lending, investing, revenue management. So he is going to talk about all things real estate today. So quick overview about his bio. He has done high-end markets like Boston and Tampa. He has overseen more than 5,000 residential units, $15 million worth of projects in the Charleston area. Specifically, he's been in the top 1% of realtors. And specifically, he is the founder of both Rivers Capital Group and then the co-founder as well of SynergyStays, which is a short-term rental revenue management optimization company. So a lot to unpack there. But Dan, tell our guests here, what do they need to know about you beyond just some of the things I mentioned in your bio?
Well, thank you for that, Lisa. Appreciate it. And yes, next to me, I like to start off telling people I am a father and a husband to an amazing wife, and honestly, my 2 beautiful kids. And that's really a big purpose in my life. Not the only purpose, but a big purpose is kids, family, travel, and just really experiencing and living in the moment. So I like people to just know who I am as a person. I care about just growing as a person every day, 1%. I spending time with the family, really truly enjoying life, and then just being better in whatever it is that I do. So as Lisa mentioned, I've been in real estate for about 20 something years, and my main focus over the last couple of years now is SynergyStays, and getting just really good at that and giving a great customer experience.
Awesome. Cool. So the article that we're going to talk about today, it was an article and podcast, actually. So it was in Skift Travel, and it was specifically about short-term rentals, talking about different regulations, Airbnb, AI, and other different trends. So the interview itself was actually with the CEO of Guesty, which is a huge company. It's a property management platform for the short-term rental industry. So it was a conversation that those podcast hosts had with that COO, again, digging into some of those trends. So let's start with that. For our folks who like to travel or do travel or use Airbnb, some of the trends that were mentioned right now in the travel world were things like short booking windows, like people are waiting until the last minute to book. They're looking at drive-to destinations, so maybe not exploring Europe and other countries and maybe looking at what's closer to them. And obviously lots of different things happening on a political regulatory landscape. So with money, looking to maybe not spend as much. So I'd love to hear your take. You are dealing with people who are traveling all the time when they're booking your short-term rentals and just looking at different trends. So do you agree with some of those trends or no?
Yes, absolutely. I listened to that podcast. They made a lot of great points, and I think we're seeing exactly what we see anytime there's economic uncertainty. You have between the tariffs, the wars going on, and AI and uncertainty about people's jobs and their future. We absolutely have been, especially over the last few months, seeing the compression of the booking windows, meaning there's a lot of properties, and every property is different, and every month's different, but you'll see a lot of properties that maybe for June, they may book out 60 or 90 days in advance, where we're starting to see that they're actually booking out maybe 30 days or 45 days in advance for that reason. People are traveling closer to home. People are waiting a little bit longer to book their destination site. And that's why we tell a lot of our clients, and I've been said this a few times on a few different stages, as far as don't react to that. Make sure you're responding. If you own a short-term rental, if this is your business, or if you're an investor, you really have to pay attention to your market and see what that compression window is. Did it go from 90 days to 45 days? You might not have to drop prices as quickly. You can kind of hold off on it. So again, yeah, I think that trend is 100% true, and I think we're going to continue to see it probably for the next couple of years.
Okay. All right, folks, keep that in mind, whether you are traveling or you're, of course, the owner of a short-term rental. So one of the things that they talked about that I thought was really interesting, they talk about the blurring of the lines between short-term rentals and hotels. And so that CEO of Guesty said that within 5 to 10 years, that you won't be able to tell them apart. That was kind of her prediction. I thought that that was super bold because obviously, as somebody who's not in the industry, but obviously a traveler, the distinctions feel very specific to me, going to a hotel versus booking an Airbnb. I would love your thoughts on that prediction that was made.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily agree or disagree with them kind of being blurred together, but you are seeing a lot of the major players in the hotel business get into these types of either boutique hotels or short-term rentals as well, and actually advertise on their website. So it is kind of being blended together. Like Marriott, Wyndham, Hyatt, Hilton, they all kind of have like these choice hotels, extended stay brands that they're building out. So they are seeing the value, and they're understanding that Airbnbs, VRBO, short-term rentals in general are not going away. They actually play a good part with each other. Because if you want, I think they mentioned in that podcast, and I think it was really smart about like, if you go to a Marriott or Hilton, you know what you're getting, you know the type of atmosphere you're going to get, you know all the rooms look alike. You might get the pool and whatever the bars and everything, but when you stay at a short-term rental, you can have a total, complete, unique, awesome experience. And not only that, I know you and I, when we travel, hotels don't really work for us. I guess if you get a 2-bedroom suite, it may, but we want several bedrooms for our kids. We can't all sleep in one room because we won't sleep. So we need that bigger house. People going maybe a bachelor party or a wedding or just a guy strip or a girl strip or whatever's going on. A lot of people like that house and that experience that they can get from it versus a hotel. But I think they both play a part with each other, and you are seeing them start to intertwine and advertise together.
That's interesting. Do you think that people have changed at all in terms of what their preferences were? Do you see people maybe flopping from one to the other, or?
It's a good question. I would say probably depends on what they're aiming for. Like, what are they? Is it an accommodation? So you can have the accommodation, like they just need to go somewhere. They might look at both hotels and studio or one-bedroom short-term rentals. I mean, I know I do. When I travel on business, I might look at a hotel and a short-term rental close by and kind of say, hey, what makes the most sense? Probably financially. Is it close to where I need to be at for that specific event? So yeah, I think people are probably intertwining them when it comes to that. But if it's a certain experience that they want, I think some people are just, I mean, some people are creature habits. They're always hotel, but they might always want to be a short-term rental.
That's true.
But I think other ones will, maybe kind of look at both and maybe base it on budget or proximity to where they're going.
Makes sense. Okay. So another area that they talked about was investors. And as you know, a lot of our audience we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of VC investors and different types of investors that are always looking for the next big thing to invest in. So from an investment perspective, talked about travel tech, of course, and the short-term rental market really being ripe for innovation, specifically because it's a younger industry, it's very tech forward. So, based on your experience, I would love to know. So you've been in property management for many, many years as well. What do you think the short-term rental industry is doing well with in terms of technology, and where are they lacking?
Well, I think they're definitely growing, like a Guesty and some of these PMSs, property management software, are doing a really good job on integrating AI to help maybe with guest communications or like price tech, like Price Labs, Beyond Pricing Wheelhouse, a pricing tool, using that to aggregate data or do some basic communication with guests so that they can really explain, the experience that they're going to have, maybe go over. I know there's some technology out there that may even you book a place and it says, hey, are you going there for a bachelor party, bachelorette party, business? And then it'll kind of shoot you itinerary based on what you're going towards. So there's a lot of cool things in the tech world that's coming out to help be used as a tool to add value to these companies. However, I think one of the concerns I have and one of the shortfalls that can happen is that all of a sudden we utilize AI or tech and we kind of get away from that human personal touch. And that is the one worry I have about it. I think companies are doing a great job integrating it, but especially like the business we're in, the revenue management side, the pricing tech is Price Labs or Wheelhouse, so we happen to use Price Labs.
Mhm.
And you can use their data and their tools to make decisions. But if that's all you use and you just rely on the data and the tech,
Mhm.
then you're still going to be behind probably at least 70% of the other short-term rental investors and owners out there. So it's
Mhm.
important to really make sure that you're using it as a tool rather than the end all be all.
That makes sense. Is there anything that is just feels so outdated? And, I have times where I'm interacting with certain companies, whether it's in the banking industry or education. And for example, it's like, hey, can you print out this document, sign it, and then scan it and send it back to me? And I have moments where I'm like, are we still doing that? Can't we just fill this out online and send it back? Is there any processes or anything that just feel so outdated from a higher level perspective?
I'd say, I mean, I'm not going to throw anybody on the bus. There's definitely some software PMSs out there, and it's not guesty. They're actually very good, that are outdated, antiquated, and don't know what they haven't adjusted to the times.
Mhm.
So yes, they don't have as many options to be able to maximize the use of the systems.
Mhm.
So, and some PMSs out there, as well as you got Airbnb. A lot of the major channels that you're on, the OTAs, are you got
Mhm.
Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, probably the
Mhm.
three biggest ones when you come to short-term rentals.
Mhm.
And VRBO is finally coming out with some
Mhm.
levers that you could pull. Airbnb by far has the most levers and adjustments that you can do as a short-term rental manager to be able to maximize the revenue for a property. VRBO is starting to implement some of those. So I'd say that is definitely one of the tech in the industry that is a little bit behind the times, but I think they're seeing the value in it and they're putting some money behind it and updating their systems to be able to have more options to be able to provide better services and better options for their operators.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, kind of back to the original trend too of like ripe for innovation, definitely still opportunities out there to upgrade the tech.
100%. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so the one of the areas that they didn't talk about too much on the podcast with Guesty was revenue management optimization. So that's obviously your area of expertise. You've mentioned that phrase a couple times. So I guess walk us through what that is, maybe if folks aren't familiar.
Yeah, I love, honestly, it is kind of a newer term. Property managers have thrown it out there on their websites, but it's not necessarily really doing what it should be. So for years, I'll just go back a little bit. So you start 2018, 19, 20, Airbnb started to become really cool, especially during COVID and everything. People really invested. I mean, it went up about, I want to say within a couple year time frame, 30% more homes were created as Airbnbs. Right now we're about 1.4 million, I believe, or 5 million in the US, and they're predicting to go to like 1.65 million short-term rentals in the United States. So but up until about 2023, we saw the trend freeze and then start dropping as far as revenue coming in for short-term rentals. You basically, just like anything in real estate, you could print money from 2020-ish to 2023. And then it really kind of started to freeze and start to stabilize and go down. And I think, first of all, you saturate a market. That's one thing that happens. But number two is short-term rental owners weren't treating it as a business. To me, a short-term rental is a business. Yes, it's a real estate investment, but it truly is a business. And it should be looked at it. And the business is actually two businesses. It's the guest experience and the hospitality side, and then it's the revenue management, making sure that you have your listing optimized so it's searchable, making sure that you do daily, weekly, monthly calendar management and the best price at the right time. And they're two totally different skill sets as well. So I've been seeing the industry, the ones who are really prevailing there are some property management companies that do a phenomenal job at both, and they've actually put a lot of money into both. But the majority, the 95%, do some sort of a decent to a great job on the guest service side, but they have no clue really how to maximize that revenue. We're seeing a lot of, I mean, I'll just give you, for instance, if you're at a market, one of the markets here, if you're in the 50th percentile, your property's in the 50th percentile, and then versus a property that's in the top 10 percentile, you could be leaving $30,000-$40,000 a year on the table if you're not treating it as a business. So we were doing full service property management a couple of years. We realized real quickly that, hey, we're really good at being at the top of the market on the revenue side. So we got rid of the property, solely focused on the revenue management, and we're starting to see that trend. There's about four or five companies that are solely focused on revenue management now.
Mm.
And I truly, that's one of my predictions, is I truly see the industry kind of going into, you'll still have your top tier property management companies, but people have to treat it as that business. And a lot of the people that are our clients, they do the guest experience and the hospitality side in-house.
Mhm.
And then they hire the expert, someone like us or whoever it is in the revenue management side. Not only does it give the utmost best service and maximizes that property's potential value,
Mhm.
but if you're doing that in-house and you hire someone like us, you may be paying 2 to 5% versus 15, 18, 20% with the full service property management company. So now more than ever, if you're hurting on the expense side,
Mm.
this is a good way to cut your expenses, but still maximize your value.
Okay. So when you said there are like 4 or 5 different companies that are doing it, are you talking about a national, like global level, or just like in our market?
Oh, no, national wise. And again, there might be more that are starting
Rough
to pop up, but
estimate,
yeah, right now, at least what I've seen that I would say, people ask who your competitors are. I'm the
Yeah.
kind of person that thinks there are no competitors if you give such a great customer experience and if you excel at it. There's plenty of business out there to help everybody out, that everybody can have a piece of the pie. So,
Mhm.
but if you want to say people that are, competing with us, as far as I know in the research I've done, there's about 3 or 4 real ones that are actually doing it very well. And my co-founder that's with me actually is in a mastermind with one of the best ones in the industry that does
Okay.
it at a higher level. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That number surprised me because that's very low. So I guess why don't you think there are more companies specifically focusing on this? Is it just still kind of new?
Yeah, like I said, the revenue management term has really been popping the last couple of years. So before that, you just hire a property management company. Again, you
Mhm.
could print money. They did the full service, and if you could hire full service, why not get full service? But I think people are starting to realize, and it's still very early on.
Mhm.
We do a lot of outreach, and investors and property management company understand revenue managers,
Mhm.
but the average person that owns 1 or 2 short-term rentals and they just bought it as like a second home that they short-term rent, they're still being educated on what that difference is and what it truly
Gotcha.
means. So yeah,
Gotcha.
it's still very early on, in my opinion, in that industry. And I think you're going to start to see more and more pop up as we go, especially as I mentioned, with insurance and taxes and capital expenditures going up,
Mhm.
not really going down. People need to save money and also maximize their revenue.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you work with your customers, what are some of the things that you do to help them optimize the revenue? Like walk us through, I guess, what that process looks like and how you're actually making them more money. What are the things that you analyze?
So one of the first things we do is we check their search rankings on Airbnb to see where they stand. So a decent amount of our clients, we find them on page anywhere from like 5+ on Airbnb.
Mhm.
Meaning, when was the last time you looked up to go find a house somewhere and you actually got to page 5 before you booked a place?
Yeah,
Probably
true.
not often. Maybe if you find that gem that holds like, a certain amount of people and has specific things that you need, but you're definitely not going to page 15 and 20.
Mhm.
So that doesn't matter how awesome your listing is, if it's not on the first 3 pages and searchable on a constant basis. Now this does adjust, and it's not like you're on page 3 and you're on page 3 forever. You have to continue to do stuff to stay there.
Mhm.
That right there, usually at least 30% of the time, a few tweaks that we do when we bring them up in the search rankings, and almost pays for a year of our services right there because of its visibility. So visibility is number one. So that's the first thing we look at, is we
Mhm.
optimize the listing, help guide them how to optimize the listing, and help them on their search rankings.
Mhm.
And then from there, as I was mentioning earlier, it's really important to get the right price at the right time. And that's always changing. So
Mhm.
if you use a tech software and you put your your parameters in the tech software, it doesn't necessarily correlate to results every time, because the markets are always adjusting. You got to really do a deep dive analysis, not only of your property, but of similar properties and how that specific market is doing on a constant basis.
Mm.
So we have a revenue manager that full-time job is literally properties flag. If they're not producing where they should be, you look at those ones first. You're still looking at the ones that are producing, but you make adjustments and tweaks. And again, you respond, we don't react, because we may see they're down in revenue this month and we're 2 weeks out from some of the bookings that normally would have booked out 3 weeks ago. But then let's just say we look at their market and the market's only 40% booked and it's normally 90% booked. We know that there's still 50% that hasn't booked yet. So we don't have to make drastic tweaks to the pricing. We might actually just adjust the listing a little bit just to make sure it's optimized to get those last minute bookings at a prime dollar amount versus dropping that rate just to get it booked.
Okay.
So that's just one of many tips of, if you are constantly looking at the data, the market, the property, you could make little tweaks here and there rather than drastic measures and then losing out on thousands of dollars.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So those small changes add up to big dollars, I imagine. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this and people wouldn't be hiring you.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, there's, like I said, it's a couple of reasons, but yeah, number one, we've never taken on a client that we haven't been able to bring more revenue in. But now more than ever, even if it's not additional revenue, I'll give you a for instance. So all of the markets that we do, I'll nerd out a little bit here. It's called RevPAR. RevPAR is revenue per available room, and that's a hotel term. But that basically takes your occupancy, your average daily rate, and as you adjust both of those, your RevPAR is going to be affected, and that's really what's going to generate your revenue. That's really a lot of people look at occupancy like, hey, I'm fully occupied. That's great. Or my ADR is high. That's great. But if you don't meet that right balance, all that matters is that your RevPAR is up. So across all of our markets that we managed last month, our RevPAR was up double-digit %, while the market average in all those markets was down 8%. So that's almost a 20% swing in possible revenue generated by either doing these tweaks or not. And my point is, you may still be even from last year when it comes to your revenue. However, if your market dipped 8% and you're actually up 8%. So it's not always necessarily more money than a previous year, but it's definitely more money than what your market's performing at. And that's what we balance, how well we're doing and if we're doing our job. Being at the top of the market.
Cool. Okay. My next question may allow you to continue to geek out, so we'll see. But the things that one other topic that we talk about, of course, AI. Every single industry is drastically impacted. We talked about it a little bit in terms of how it's already being leveraged to elevate the user experience. So what about from the revenue optimization side? Once again, since they didn't delve too deep into that side of things, how can AI be used right now to help people, put more money in their pockets? You've talked about a little bit, but I don't know if there's anything specific that you want to dig into on how.
I don't know that a person, I guess they could put these things, it depends. Like if you want to do the revenue management yourself, like some people, I always joke around about that, but it's like treat it as two different businesses. And then whatever one, if you're an owner operator, figure out which one you're good at and go all in on that one and hire out the expert on the other side. Most people get in the short-term rentals because they love the hospitality side and they want to create this awesome experience. They probably didn't get into short-term rentals because it's like, I want to like geek out on the technology and the pricing software. That's probably not why they got into it. And maybe it is, and that's awesome if it is, then they should focus on that and the other people should focus on the hospitality side. So if that is you and you're like, yes, I would love to do this, I would say you find your pricing tool and you talk to companies or figure out how to use AI to analyze all the data as quickly as possible and put that in front of you so you can make real-time decisions without having to go to 8 different areas. Like right now in Price Labs we love just because it has so many tools, kind of like Airbnb, that you could really dive deep into, but it's in 10 or 12 different sections. So we've actually utilized technology we have our own proprietary reporting software for our clients that updates every 24 hours that pulls the data that we want out of those different areas, puts it onto one dashboard. Now they can see how they're creating their revenue, how they're doing versus the market, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way that we've been able to utilize it. And if you're doing your own revenue management, I would suggest that you do something similar so that you can just look at a dashboard in real time and see how your property is doing.
Okay.
Or
Cool.
portfolio.
So it sounds like a lot of just the analysis with the numbers. You probably have various different sections. This is where obviously I can't geek out, so I'm going to talk about it at a higher level. But like you said, comparing to the market, maybe looking at like, certain number of days, obviously the financial figures. So it's AI's just analyzing all that and providing you with what you need to know to figure out what levers you need to pull to make adjustments. Is that right? That's
a good way to put it. Like I had mentioned earlier, like I think use AI as a tool to help you be resourceful. Don't use it as the end all be all making decisions for you. At least not now. Because we've seen AI make mistakes. Go to ChatGPT and ask it some questions. And I don't know if everybody realizes this, but you ask it a few questions and then it starts to realize what answer you want. And it almost like wants to please you. So like you don't want to do that and it's giving you wrong data points and you're out in trouble. But to extrapolate the data and kind of put it all together so that you could see it basically as a dashboard and then you could make your decision based on that. I always like to say revenue management is the mix between a science and an art. So you can use the technology for the science part of it, but you still need to be the artist to make sure that you're making the right, brush strokes. To
I
paint
like
that
that.
painting here.
It's very poetic.
Thank you.
Nicely put. Cool. Well, that's actually, a great way to kind of wrap up, I think. We've talked about regulations, we've talked about travel trends, we've talked about, of course, the short-term rental market and revenue optimization. Anything we didn't cover that
Yes.
you think is worth touching on?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think it's just, again, treat it as a business, as both you do your hospitality side and your revenue management side. As long as you treat it as a business, you're going to be successful in this industry. And lastly, I guess the last tip I'll give is if you're someone that's looking to go buy a short-term rental and you want to get into it, or you're looking for your next one, really do a deep dive into the market itself to not only see what the potential revenue is and maybe what the market's lacking. Like you may be thinking of buying a huge house and it has enough of those and it needs more 2 bedrooms. You could do a deep dive there and then also know what amenities or what you'll need to be in the top 10%, like do a deep dive with that as well. I think those are very important if you're looking to get into short-term rental investing.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to connect or learn about SynergyStays, how do they find you?
All right. It's www.synergystayslocal.com. You could follow us at SynergyStays on Instagram, and myself, it's Dan Rivers _RCG.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you. Appreciate the
Thanks.
time.
Thanks, y'all. See you next time.